In my experience, kaiju movies have always been somewhat of a hard sell for other people and general audiences as a whole, making it difficult to recommend great films that fall under that broad genre, so others can understand the glory of big monsters smashing buildings and, in some cases, each other. Showing people what makes them so entertaining, awesome, and sometimes even breathtaking, as pretentious as that sounds. However, if I were to point someone in the right direction, in my opinion, there's no better point of entry than Legendary's own Monsterverse. I'm not usually the type to get stoked for every new blockbuster that comes out, but Legendary have managed to create a multimedia franchise that not only appeals to general audiences and fans alike, but also manages to be bloody amazing while doing it. Maximum quality content, if I do say so myself. Speaking of, what's up everyone, it's Shane from Maximum Quality Content here. And before we delve into the many reasons why the Monsterverse rocks, I just want to say this. If you find the concept of huge ass monsters tearing stuff up to be corny or kaiju movies to be poorly executed in general, then I'm not here to berate you on why you're wrong. After all, I'm a kaiju fan, not an anime fan. It's a niche genre for a reason, not everyone's going to have the taste for it. I mainly want to give people who are intrigued by the concept of monsters, or Godzilla, or King Kong, or any big monster really, a little nudge, a little bit of encouragement to follow up on that curious itch, and why I believe the Monsterverse to be a great example of this genre, and an amazing piece of media in and of itself. Okay, before anything else, let's cover the most important aspect of monster movies. The monsters. Are the kaiju in the Monsterverse cool? Does the CG do them justice? Is the action thrilling? Well, do you have these? I'm sure I don't even have to tell you, but the Monsterverse creatures are amazing, both in design and execution. The CGI and VFX on display here is like out of this world. Like, these movies are what you point to alongside Planet of the Apes and Avatar when people bring up the age-old redundant argument of CG being soulless and inferior to practical. The design of the monsters is massive in scope, familiar and simple at first glance, but more intricate the longer you look. Of course, you've got the more famous monsters like King Ghidorah, Godzilla, King Kong, the ones you'll recognise, and they're all badass respectively, but I think a lot of credit needs to go to the more original designs, which are actually really creative and deadly looking, and sometimes even cute looking. However, the biggest achievement with the Monsterverse creatures by far is how they managed to characterize them. Godzilla is the king of the monsters. And I mean that quite literally in this case. Goji's main concern is being the alpha, the apex predator, the Giga Chad. Only ever rising to action whenever there's a force that threatens his status, so he can ultimately beat them and show the rest of the gang who's in charge. Kong, on the other hand, literally could not give a damn about any of that. Or anything, to be honest. My man literally just wants to be Monkey. Which, that's a pretty respectable goal, I'm not gonna lie. Granted, I know all of this because I've watched the movies multiple times and listened to the humans talk about it in the narrative of each respective film. But I guarantee that anyone could gather the same conclusion just by watching the monster scenes in isolation. That's how effective the characterization of these kaiju are. They are characters themselves, not just CG spectacles like most other blockbuster movies. The point is, the monsters in the Monsterverse are monstrously awesome. There's no two ways about it. A lot of kudos to the VFX team for nailing their depiction and portrayal. So anyway, what the heck even is this Monsterverse thing exactly? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical viewer. The Monsterverse is a multimedia franchise mainly consisting of the main 9 movies, but also spanning books, comics, and shows, both live action and anime. What was I saying? Show, yeah, there's a show as well. It's pretty awesome. So anyway, as you'd expect, it revolves around gigantic monsters. No surprise there, but what sets it apart from other media of its ilk is how it goes about that. And the idea that this world posits is that these massive creatures have existed for millions of years. Like, it cannot be understated how long these creatures have been around, to the point where it might as well be their world and we just so happen to live in it. Millennia ago, they even dominated the surface, when the Earth was a lot more radioactive. However, as radiation levels decreased over centuries, the monsters started going underground, closer to the Earth's core and closer to all that sweet, sweet radiation, entering long periods of hibernation, and by long periods I mean literally like hundreds of thousands to even millions of years. 1,000 years to them is like setting our alarm clock to 15-minute snooze, only appearing now due to recent human cock-ups. You see, how monsters came about is much like the Big Bang Theory. Sure, it's a commonly held understanding on how we arrived at where we are today, but at the end of the day, it's just a theory. This is where the human element comes in. Something that I've talked about in other videos, but bears repeating, the secret to making a good kaiju movie or piece of media is a good human story. You obviously can't have monsters fighting or destroying stuff for 90 minutes straight, excuse me. That's why the humans are there to provide context, to ground the narrative and give us someone to root for, or shoes to fill to immerse ourselves in the story. Every Monsterverse movie follows a different set of protagonists, in a different year. For instance, Godzilla 2014 takes place in 2014, whereas Kong Skull Island takes place in 1973. So yeah, it's all over the place, but there is one element linking them all together. In one way or another, every movie, every protagonist, every story is in some way linked to Monarch, the most important factor in the Monsterverse by far. Monarch is essentially a shadowy international organisation whose purpose is to study and defend against monsters, or titans as they're referred to in this world. Similar to other fictional organisations like, say, the SCP Foundation for instance, in terms of the knowledge of its existence being concealed from the populace. Monarch is pretty much the holy grail of Legendary's universe, as it acts as a conduit for all of its storytelling and world building, which is in large part pulled off with flying colours. You see, what makes the human side of the Monsterverse so damn interesting is each character's link to Monarch. Because of their varied perspectives and circumstances, their views of the organisation and their outlook on a world with monsters is always completely different. In one example, they're a team of underdog explorers seeking knowledge about these mysterious titans. But in another, they're portrayed as a shady secret arm of the government that is more concerned with protecting people from the truth and protecting them from the actual threat at large. We're never shown one consistent view of Monarch as either a good or bad organisation, leaving the audience to come to their own conclusion, which I think adds an extra layer of engagement with not only the movies but every other output as well. Moving on. Monarch serves as our main source of information for all of the oddities, events, and titans on Earth. While Godzilla, Kong, and the rest of the titans are inarguably the main attraction, they still remain a mystery to us, which is actually part of the appeal. With each new entry, we're learning more about these monsters, how they came about, why they act and react in the manner that they do. It's like we're learning alongside the humans, we're learning alongside Monarch, and the intriguing mystery to be solved ends up making up for any shortcomings in terms of the main narrative or character development, which is quite a divisive topic amongst the community. While I personally think that the human characters are well written, they can be quite hit or miss. Thankfully, the world building is Legendary's ace in the hole. Sure, there are some minor inconsistencies and plot contrivances here and there, but ultimately what matters most is that it's an interesting, engaging, and simply put, just fun world. Lastly, I think the Monsterverse has the best examples of public reaction to the looming threat and existence of giant monsters, period. Not just for Godzilla and Kong, but for all kaiju media. I mean, we get to see scenes of characters suffering loss by the hands of titans, experiencing PTSD from the events they suffered through and witnessed. Hell, some people who weren't directly affected still question their existence despite the appearance of Godzilla in 2014. Plus, it's not just interpersonal conflicts either. In the recent Monarch show, we see Godzilla shelters all over the world, with drills taking place, prepping the populace. And in Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the main plot points revolves around a conspiracy podcast and a corporation trying to exploit the problem at hand by creating a new solution. All of this does so much to immerse the audience in the world they've created. Finally, the cherry on top of this monstrously awesome sundae is that this franchise isn't oversaturated with content. The most obvious comparison is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because of course. Even if you're a fan of what Disney is doing with those characters, you have to admit there's way too much to keep up with, especially now. I mean, it's literally just movies on top of shows on top of movies, and most of it's been pretty ass lately. No wonder people are starting to feel superhero burnout, especially with Marvel. The Monsterverse is literally the exact opposite. There are only 4 mainline movies so far since 2014, and one show, excuse me. Granted, the Monsterverse has spread to other mediums for better and for worse. Far, far worse. But none of it is essential. You can understand what's going on just by watching the movies. Everything else is just delicious seasoning. Now is the absolute best time to get into the Monsterverse. Currently we have the Monarch Legacy of Monsters series, which so far has been bloody brilliant. Remember all that world building talk I did? Well, this show is the pinnacle of that, with some compelling human characters to boot. On top of that, Godzilla x Kong The New Empire is just on the horizon. A bit of a sus title, I know, and the bisexual lighting in the title drop isn't exactly helping, but still, it's slated for release in April of 2024, so not long to go. There's a lot to look forward to, so you know what they say, there's no time like the present. With that being said, that's pretty much the essential overview of the Monsterverse and why it works. Like if you liked, dislike if you disliked, subscribe for more quality content, and I'll see you guys next time.
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.